Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When a quiet Florida landowner welcomes his old friend from Paris, their peaceful reunion ignites a war with a ruthless HOA president. What begins as bourbon on the porch turns into trespass, surveillance, and forged documents until one man fights back to reclaim his freedom. I hadn't seen Luke in almost 5 years. When he stepped out of the arrivals gate at Jacksonville International Airport, dragging that comically tiny roller bag behind him and wearing the same ridiculous tweed blazer I remembered from college, it felt like we'd never skipped a beat. Luke was one of those people who somehow stayed eternally youthful. French charm, maybe, or good skincare. I, on the other hand, had a little more salt in my beard and creaks in my knees than I'd care to admit. We spent the first 2 days doing what any grown men reunited after years apart do: eating too much, drinking just enough, and reminiscing about all the dumb stuff we got away with in our 20s. My backyard was our sanctuary. My house sat on 2.5 acres just outside a gated community run by one of those ever-watchful HOAs. Mine was private land, outside their jurisdiction, and I liked it that way. No nosy neighbors, no pastel color scheme requirements, and no weekly citations for daring to grow tomatoes in my front yard. That Saturday evening was perfect. The sun had dipped just behind the tree line, casting a soft orange glow across the yard. Luke and I were on the patio, sipping from a bottle of bourbon he insisted on bringing from Paris, aged in French oak barrels, mon ami, and listening to some Django Reinhardt on a Bluetooth speaker. The air was warm and lazy, filled with the smell of grilled steaks and jasmine, and then came her voice. It sliced through the music like a rusty saw. "Excuse me," a sharp, nasal tone coated in faux politeness but with that unmistakable sting of entitlement. I turned, and there she was. Mid-50s, peroxide blonde helmet of hair, a salmon-colored cardigan slung over her shoulders like she thought she was playing tennis in the Hamptons. She didn't bother with a greeting. She marched right up to the gate, my gate, and folded her arms like she was preparing to issue a citation. "You the homeowner?" she asked, eyes flicking from me to Luke like we were two teenagers caught smoking behind the bleachers. "I am," I said slowly, setting down my glass. "Can I help you with something?" She narrowed her eyes at Luke. "We've had concerns from the HOA board. There's been talk of strangers on the property." "Foreigners." Luke blinked and looked at me, clearly wondering if this was some sort of Florida prank. I wish it had been. "I'm sorry. Who exactly are you?" I asked. "Karen Wexler," she announced like she expected applause. "President of the Maple Ridge Homeowners Association." "Well, Karen, this property isn't part of Maple Ridge," I said, keeping my tone even. "This is private land. I'm not under your HOA." She gave a tight-lipped smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Perhaps technically, but you're adjacent to our community, and our residents are uncomfortable. We've noticed an increase in unusual activity." I stared at her. "Luke is my friend. He flew in from Paris. We're having dinner. That's the unusual activity." "I'm not here to argue," she said, even though she clearly was. "But Maple Ridge has certain standards, and if your property is going to affect our property values, we have a right to express concern." I stood. "No, you don't. You don't have any right to come onto my land, interrogate my guest, or tell me who I can have in my own yard. We're done here." Karen's eyes narrowed. "You'll be hearing from us. This isn't over." She turned on her heels and stalked off, muttering something about maintaining community image. Luke just laughed, sipping his bourbon. "Do Americans really elect these people?" he asked, still grinning. "No," I said. "They appoint themselves." We tried to go back to our evening, but something had shifted. The music didn't sound quite as smooth. The food lost a little of its taste. And even though Luke didn't say anything, I could tell he was unsettled. So was I. Not because I thought she had any power. She didn't. But because I knew the type. Karen wasn't the kind of person who took no as an answer. She was the type who escalated. And I had the sinking feeling she was just getting started. 2 days passed. Luke and I tried to put the whole Karen encounter behind us. He joked about it over breakfast, mimicking her tone and pretending to inspect my yard with a clipboard. We even took a trip into St. Augustine wandered through the historic streets and ended the day with oysters and live blues. But even with the distractions, I couldn't shake the feeling that something ugly was brewing just under the surface. That Tuesday morning, I found a letter folded and tucked under a rock on my front steps. No envelope, just an HOA letterhead, and the kind of officious language that makes your skin crawl. It wasn't addressed by name, just to the occupant, already a red flag. The letter accused me of undermining community standards and harboring unauthorized non-residents. There were vague references to foreign individuals without proper documentation and a warning that my activities were being monitored. It was signed by the Maple Ridge Standards Committee, which sounded like something out of a Cold War propaganda film. I read it twice, then handed it to Luke. He skimmed it, raised his eyebrows, and said flatly, "Are they serious, or is this your local theater group performing satire?" "They're serious," I muttered, folding the letter and sliding it into a folder. "And they're escalating." That night, I noticed the Facebook group. I don't usually bother with neighborhood drama online, but this one was impossible to ignore. Someone, surprise, surprise, had created a new private group, Preserve Maple Ridge Values. The banner image was a stock photo of a sunset behind a white picket fence, and the tagline read, "Upholding the standards our families deserve." A few friends who lived within the HOA boundaries messaged me screenshots. Karen had made a post that read, "Neighbors, please be aware that there has been suspicious activity just outside our community. An unknown foreign national is residing on a property adjacent to Maple Ridge. We must remain vigilant. Safety first." The comments were what you'd expect, a toxic mix of suburban hysteria and thinly veiled xenophobia. No wonder the dogs won't stop barking. I knew I saw someone sketchy at the grocery store. Can't we vote to extend HOA jurisdiction? And my personal favorite, foreigners bring crime. It's statistically proven. Luke, ever the optimist, tried to laugh it off. "They're afraid of baguettes and good taste," he said, biting into a croissant we'd picked up from a local bakery. Should I go out there and sing the French national anthem to really scare them? But I wasn't laughing. This was organized harassment now. My property, my home, was being talked about like it was a threat to national security. I hadn't seen anything like it since college town politics during election years. On Thursday, things went from online slander to real-world confrontation. Around 5 in the evening, just as Luke and I were finishing some landscaping in the back, I heard the front gate rattle. I stepped around the side of the house and froze. Karen was back, this time with 2 men in tow. One was a pudgy guy in khakis and a tucked-in polo shirt with a clipboard. The other was taller, younger, and clearly trying to grow a beard he hadn't yet earned. Both wore those HOA volunteer badges like they were federal marshals. I didn't even get a chance to speak before clipboard guy announced, "We're here for a community compliance assessment." I raised an eyebrow. "You're on private property." Karen smiled sweetly. "We just want to clear up some things before this situation gets out of hand." Luke appeared beside me, dirty gloves still on, his expression unreadable. "First," clipboard guy said, flipping through his pages like he was auditioning for Law & Order HOA unit, "we need to know the identity of your guest and his intended length of stay." I stared at him. "That's none of your business." Karen stepped forward, voice tight. "When someone's presence creates concern for public safety, it becomes the community's business." Luke finally spoke, his accent sharper now. "Are you suggesting I'm dangerous? Because I'm French?" Karen turned to him like she was addressing a noisy waiter. "No one is attacking you. We're just trying to protect our families." I stepped between them. "You're trespassing. You're harassing my guest. And if you don't leave right now, I'll call the sheriff." Karen's smile dropped. Clipboard guy muttered, "This could have been resolved civilly." "I am being civil," I said. "You're the ones treating my property like your jurisdiction." They left eventually, though not without Karen throwing a final grenade. "This won't go away just because you're stubborn." As I closed the gate behind them, Luke exhaled slowly. "You Americans, your revolutions are so petty." That night, he told me he was thinking about leaving early. He didn't want to cause more trouble. I told him hell no. If I let these people drive him away, they'd win. This wasn't just about a guest anymore. It was about the principle. And I was done playing nice. It was just after noon when I pulled into the driveway and immediately noticed something off. The gate was ajar. I always latched it behind me, even if I was just stepping out to the store. It wasn't paranoia, just habit, especially after the parade of HOA zombies last week. My stomach sank. I parked, left the engine running, and headed for the backyard. Luke was there, sitting on the porch swing with a strange, tight look on his face. Not angry, not afraid, just humiliated. That bothered me more than if he'd been yelling. "What happened?" I asked, my voice already sharpening. He gestured toward the side gate. They came back. 2 of them, a woman and a man. Not Karen this time, but I think she sent them. They asked me to verify my identity and said they were doing a wellness check on behalf of the community board. I clenched my fists. "Did they come inside the gate?" He nodded. "They didn't ask. Just walked in while I was in the garden. I told them to leave. One of them took pictures of me, the house, the yard. I didn't say anything. I just turned and walked back to the truck. Luke followed but didn't stop me. He knew I wasn't the type to explode without reason. But this was a violation, plain and simple. I called the non-emergency police line and reported the trespassing. An officer came by a couple hours later. Officer Daniels, mid-40s, looked tired of HOA drama before I even opened my mouth. I handed him a USB stick with the security cam footage. Sure enough, it showed 2 HOA volunteers, badges and all, slipping through my gate and confronting Luke on the property. He watched, nodding, but his tone stayed frustratingly neutral. "Technically, no damage was done," he said. "And unless your guest wants to press charges for harassment, it's probably a civil matter. So people can just walk into my yard, interrogate my guest, and all you can say is civil matter." "I'm not saying it's right," Daniels replied. "I'm saying it's hard to prosecute someone for being nosy in Florida, unless they're carrying a chainsaw or wearing ski masks." Luke didn't want to file a report. He said it wasn't worth it, that maybe if we ignored them, they'd get bored. But he didn't get it. This wasn't going away. These people were obsessed with control, and they'd decided my house was enemy territory. That night, I took a walk around the perimeter, tightening the locks on the gates and checking the camera feeds. Just past midnight, I saw a car slow roll down the street in front of the house. Not unusual on its own, but the car stopped, lights off, and I saw a phone screen light up inside. Someone was filming the property. By the time I got to the road, the car was gone, but the message was clear. They weren't watching anymore. They were surveilling. 2 mornings later, I got a certified letter from the HOA. Not a generic warning, a formal complaint. It accused me of knowingly harboring an unregistered non-resident and creating a hostile environment for the community. They even cited an HOA bylaw about unauthorized long-term visitors, despite the fact that, again, I wasn't even a member of the HOA. I faxed the letter to a real estate attorney I knew from back when I bought the place. He called me back within 20 minutes, almost laughing. They've got no jurisdiction. It's like someone from the next county sending you a speeding ticket because they saw you drive fast on TV. That's what I thought, I said. So what now? You document everything. Every letter, every visit, every word out of their mouths. They keep this up and we can get an injunction, maybe even damages. I hung up feeling a little better until I checked my phone again. Luke had texted, "Someone knocked on the door while you were gone. Said they were from the Community Oversight Committee. Told me I should pack and leave before things get uncomfortable." That was it. I ordered 4 new cameras that night. Thermal, night vision, the works. I put in a remote gate system with reinforced locks, but the thing that really lit the fire under me was Luke's next words over dinner that night. "If it's becoming dangerous, I can go. I don't want you getting hurt or arrested because of me." He meant it. I could see it in his face. He wasn't scared for himself. He was worried about me, about what I might do. And, honestly, so was I. Because I'd spent weeks trying to do this the right way. Talk, reason, call the cops, lawyers, boundaries. But that afternoon, when I saw someone had walked onto my land and threatened my friend in my own damn house, something cracked. It wasn't fear anymore. It was something colder. I started planning. Friday morning started with a thud, literally. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard a loud, deliberate knock on the front door. Not the casual tap of a neighbor or a delivery guy, but the kind that said authority. I opened it to find a man in a county uniform holding a clipboard, flanked by another guy with a measuring wheel and a municipal truck idling behind them. "Mr. Callahan?" the clipboard guy asked. "That's me," I replied, eyeing the vehicle. "What's this about?" "Complaint from Maple Ridge HOA," he said. "Zoning enforcement. Alleged unpermitted structures on your property." I blinked, then laughed. "You're kidding." He wasn't. He handed me a copy of the complaint, several pages citing a shed I'd built 3 years ago, permitted. A wooden pergola over my patio, also permitted. And bizarrely, unauthorized garden features, which I assumed referred to Luke's stone herb, Spiral. I invited them in, not because I had to, but because I wanted to watch their faces when I pulled out the massive binder of permits and inspections I'd been compiling since the day this circus started. After 30 minutes, they left with apologies, but not before letting it slip that the complainant was a recurring source of paperwork. Karen, of course. Later that day, I learned that HOA was trying to push a vote to expand community boundaries, which, if passed, would attempt to retroactively claim jurisdiction over adjacent parcels, including mine. It was a long shot legally, but Karen was lobbying hard. I found out because one of the HOA board members, Kevin, a wiry guy in his late 50s with a tired look and a whispery voice, called me. He sounded ashamed. "Listen, I know you're not part of Maple Ridge," he said, "but I didn't vote for this. Karen's been trying to rope your land into the HOA for years. Says it's necessary for aesthetic continuity. Most of us just tune her out. So why are you calling me now?" He hesitated. "Because she's not tuning you out. She's escalating. She wants to make an example out of you." I asked him to send me everything, emails, messages, anything she'd said or written. He agreed, on the condition I kept his name out of it. I did. I wasn't looking for martyrs. I was building a case. That night, Luke came in from the porch with a strange look on his face. There was a man watching the house from across the road. I waved. He just stared and got in his car. We checked the cameras. Sure enough, black Ford Explorer parked for 20 minutes, no plates visible. By Sunday, the mood had shifted. Luke was quieter. I was checking the gate locks compulsively. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was the sick weight of inevitability. That afternoon, I came out of the garage to find 2 HOA members, the same clipboard duo from last week, standing inside my fence inspecting my backyard like they were on a real estate tour. I lost it. "Get the hell off my property," I shouted, striding toward them. The younger one jumped, clearly startled. The other raised a hand like he was trying to cast a spell of calm. "We're just doing a visual assessment." "You're trespassing again," I snapped, yanking my phone out and starting to film. "You've been warned. Leave. Now." They left, reluctantly. One of them muttered something about hostility as they climbed over the fence instead of using the gate they'd unlocked without permission. That night, I called my lawyer and said I wanted to proceed with filing harassment charges and a cease and desist. He agreed. We had enough. The next day was the breaking point. Luke was out watering the herbs. I was inside, finishing some paperwork. Then I heard shouting, raised voices, and a thick French accent that didn't sound like his usual relaxed cadence. I ran outside. A man, broad, flannel-shirted, maybe late 40s, was standing on my property line, yelling at Luke. Something about illegal immigrants and scaring the kids. I saw Luke's hands were up, defensively. No violence, but rage boiled in my chest like acid. I crossed the yard fast, too fast, and before I knew what I was doing, I shoved the guy, hard. He stumbled back, caught off guard, then immediately reached for his phone. "You just assaulted me," he barked. I didn't say anything. Luke grabbed my arm, trying to pull me away. "Tom," he said, low and urgent. "Let's go inside." I stood there a moment longer, staring the guy down until he finally backed off and left. The cops showed up that evening. Not Officer Daniels this time. 2 younger officers, stiff and formal. The man I'd shoved had filed a report for battery. No serious injuries, but under Florida law, that was enough. I was arrested in my own living room, cuffed and placed in the back of a squad car while Luke stood helpless on the porch, looking like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. I spent 48 hours in county lockup, not my first choice for a weekend retreat. By the time I got out, Luke was gone. He'd left a note. It was calm, kind, apologetic. Said he didn't want to be the reason things escalated further. He was flying back to Paris. Said I should focus on clearing my name. And just like that, the house was quiet again. But not in the peaceful way. In the kind of quiet that comes before a storm. It's strange coming home from jail and finding your house cleaner than you left it. Luke had tidied everything. Kitchen spotless. Couch pillows fluffed. Even the herbs had been watered. But the place felt hollow. Like a hotel room after checkout. All order, no life. His note sat on the table. Just a folded sheet of paper with my name scrawled in his jagged European handwriting. Tom, I am sorry. This has gone too far. You have always been a stubborn man, and I love that about you, but I cannot be the reason you end up with a record, or worse. Please focus on yourself now. I will be back when this madness is over. L. It wasn't a goodbye. Not really. But it still hit me like one. I sat for hours in that kitchen, staring at the letter, sipping whiskey I didn't really want. The silence buzzed. The cameras outside kept blinking, recording nothing. No Luke on the porch swing, no guitar strumming, no laughter over burned toast and jam. Only the buzz of fluorescent lights and the slow grind of betrayal in my gut. By the next morning, the incident had already spread like wildfire through the HOA rumor mill. Someone, no doubt Karen, leaked my arrest to the neighborhood Facebook group. A screenshot of the police report made its way into my inbox, captioned, "Is this who we want living next to our children?" Karen even chimed in personally in the comments. "I sincerely hope the authorities take this seriously. We warned him. His behavior is escalating. Community safety must come first." I wanted to punch a wall, but instead I called my lawyer, Gavin. He was already working on the cease and desist, but now we had a new item on the agenda, defamation. "Let them talk," Gavin said. "Every word they put online is another shovel digging their legal grave. But now we escalate. You okay with that?" "Do it," I said. "Hit them hard." That afternoon, I started compiling everything. Every letter, every video clip, every screenshot, every incident, from the first knock on the gate to the night I got cuffed. I set up a timeline in a private folder, labeled it Operation Torchlight, because if they wanted war, I was going to light up every shadow they thought they could hide in. And then something unexpected happened. A message popped up in my inbox. Subject line, "I'm sorry." It was from Kevin, the same HOA board member who'd warned me about Karen's boundary expansion plans. He wrote, "They're out of control. She told the board she was filing to have your property declared a community nuisance. Said it was for safety, but I think she's hoping to trigger a zoning review." I've attached screenshots. You didn't get this from me. Attached were internal emails between Karen and the board. In them, she called my home a rogue element and referred to Luke as potentially undocumented. She asked if the HOA had the authority to request an ICE visit. Yes, seriously. It wasn't just harassment anymore. It was a targeted campaign. I sent it all to Gavin. His reply came in less than 10 minutes. "We're going after them. Cease and desist letter will go out tomorrow, and after that we go civil." I posted a public message on my personal Facebook. No names, no accusations, just the facts. What had happened, how long it had gone on, how Luke had left because he didn't feel safe. I added a short video, Karen and her clipboard crew hopping my fence caught on camera. Within 12 hours, the post had over 1,000 shares. By morning, it was being re-uploaded on TikTok, Reddit, even a local news Facebook page. That's when the media started calling. A reporter from Jacksonville Journal reached out asking if I'd be willing to speak. Then Action News Jax wanted to schedule a segment. Suddenly, I was the story. Florida man harassed by HOA despite not being a member. There were memes, of course. One of them was just a still of me standing in front of my fence, arms crossed, with the caption, HOA, hell outta area. And then the real flood began. Messages poured in, some from strangers thanking me for standing up. But others, the ones that mattered, came from my own community. A woman named Sophia, who lived 2 blocks away, wrote, "Karen tried to find me for having my mother-in-law stay for a month. Said she was loitering. I was too scared to push back. Thank you for speaking up." Another man, Daryl, said he paid over $2,000 in bogus landscape violations because he didn't want his teenage son harassed for playing basketball at night. They'd all been quiet. Until now. I was no longer the lone lunatic yelling at clouds. I was a guy who took the hits and kept filming. Karen tried to fire back with a PR move. Some canned post about misinformation, calling me combative, unstable, unwilling to engage in dialogue. But the tide was already turning, and her polite fascism didn't play well on camera. Gavin sent me a draft of the civil suit we were preparing. Targeted harassment, attempted interference with private property rights, defamation, and civil trespass. And because we had evidence of her pushing to alter zoning through lies, maybe even fraud. That night, I sat on the porch. Alone, yeah. But this time, I wasn't tired. I was focused. I'd lost Luke. Temporarily, I hoped, but I hadn't lost my land. I hadn't lost my name. And I sure as hell hadn't lost my fight. By the end of the week, Gavin had filed the lawsuit in county court. 43 pages of tightly written legal hell, complete with exhibits, time-stamped screenshots, and every camera angle I'd recorded since this whole mess started. The defendants, Karen Wexler personally, and the Maple Ridge Homeowners Association institutionally. The sheriff's deputy served them both on a rainy Thursday morning. Karen's reaction made the rounds in the group chats within hours. According to one witness, a retired Army vet who didn't much care for HOA politics, she answered the door in a silk robe, tried to argue with the deputy, and then screamed at him about male aggression before slamming the door and throwing the lawsuit packet into her azaleas. Classy. That afternoon, her post went live in the neighborhood group. I regret to inform you that a lawsuit has been filed against our community. Certain parties are seeking to profit from misunderstandings, and I urge everyone to remain calm and unified during this attack on our values. She was losing control. You could feel it. The comments beneath her post were no longer pure praise. There were questions, doubts. One person asked if it was true that Luke had been harassed. Another demanded financial records. A third simply wrote, "Maybe we should stop policing everyone's bushes." And then Kevin, dear, tired Kevin, forwarded me something incredible. An internal HOA email chain started by Karen titled Emergency Board Strategy, Narrative Alignment. In it, she openly instructed the board to deny knowledge of her actions, distance themselves from the surveillance, and claim she was acting in a personal capacity. Even better, one board member, a guy named Mitch, replied that he couldn't support a lie that's going to backfire, and attached a PDF of HOA meeting minutes where Karen explicitly described her plans to reclaim jurisdiction over my land. Her name, her voice, her agenda, on record. Gavin nearly giggled when I sent it over. "She's cooked," he said. "We'll bury them in this." And then the real show began. Local news picked up the story and ran a segment titled When HOA Power Goes Too Far. They interviewed me on my front porch. I wore a plain black shirt and spoke simply. No drama, just facts. I didn't even have to mention Luke. They already knew. The segment showed a brief clip from my security footage, Karen climbing my fence clipboard in hand. The voiceover called it unprecedented overreach. The final frame was my no trespassing sign, zoomed in like it was the Constitution itself. The comments online exploded. National outlets picked it up. Within a day, I got calls from CNN, NBC, even one from some guy claiming to work for Netflix. But the real shift came when neighbors, actual Maple Ridge residents, started reaching out directly. Sophia stopped by in person. She brought a tray of brownies and sat on my porch like we'd known each other for years. She told me how Karen had fined her 3 times for having wind chimes on her porch and once tried to ban her husband's truck because it had aggressive decals. Another neighbor, Tomas, showed up with copies of his own violation notices, 32 of them in 2 years. His offense: having a lime tree too close to the sidewalk. They were fed up. Everyone was. Karen hadn't just pushed me. She'd ruled over the entire neighborhood like a petty dictator. My fight had lit a fuse, and now the whole damn place was waking up. Then came the knock I didn't expect. It was Officer Daniels, same guy who had brushed me off the first time. He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight like his boots were filled with lead. "Evening," he said. "Got a minute?" I nodded, not moving from my porch chair. "Wanted to let you know something. We're reopening the report from that trespass incident. Couple residents came forward, said they saw HOA members going onto your property without permission. One of them claims Karen encouraged it." I tilted my head. "So, suddenly it matters?" Daniel sighed. "Look, I get it. We didn't take it seriously. Should've. She's got friends in City Hall, makes things complicated. But now that you've filed a civil case, we've got a formal basis to reinvestigate." I didn't thank him, just nodded and let him finish. When he left, I finally exhaled. The walls were cracking. And just in time, because Gavin called the next morning with news that hit like a freight train. "They forged documents," he said. "I can't believe it, but they actually tried to retroactively include your parcel in HOA zoning using a doctored plat map. One of our investigators found inconsistencies in the filings. Karen's signature on something dated 2 years before she even joined the board. It was fraud. Actual, chargeable, prosecutable fraud." I almost dropped the phone. "They're trying to cover their tracks now," Gavin continued, "but it's too late. We're forwarding it to the DA. I leaned back in my chair, letting it all soak in. From a backyard bourbon night with an old friend, to lawsuits, media storms, and forged maps. I didn't plan this war, but I was damn well going to win it. The courthouse was stuffy in that way only government buildings can manage. Too much beige, not enough air. I sat at the plaintiff's table in a cheap rented blazer, Gavin beside me in a tailored suit that looked like it cost more than my truck. Across from us, Karen, same helmet of blonde hair but less color in her face. She didn't look like the woman who'd once stormed my gate, clipboard in hand and fire in her voice. Now she looked like someone trying very hard not to sweat through a silk blouse. The judge was sharp, mid-60s, no-nonsense, veteran of 2 decades of HOA drama if her bored tone was anything to go by. She asked questions fast, clipped, and without patience for theatrics. We didn't need theatrics. We had everything. The footage, the forged plat maps, the emails, the statements from multiple neighbors, and even a couple of former HOA board members who now wanted to testify that they'd been pressured to go along with Karen's expansion fantasies. Kevin testified too. Remotely, in a tie he clearly hadn't worn in years, visibly nervous but steady. Gavin walked the court through every step of the harassment. The letters, the surprise inspections, the trespassing, the targeted behavior toward Luke, and finally the incitement of public hostility that led to my arrest. Karen's defense? A mix of denial, deflection, and righteous indignation. She claimed I had a pattern of aggression that Luke refused to engage, and that her actions were within the scope of concern for the welfare of the community. Gavin didn't even blink. Just asked her to read aloud the email where she wrote, "We need to break this man. He's too smug for his own good." She turned the color of boiled shrimp. The judge called a recess. Karen's lawyer, some poor junior associate from a firm that clearly didn't expect to be handed a bomb, tried to negotiate a settlement. Gavin politely told them where to shove it. 2 days later, the ruling came in. The court recognized my full and exclusive ownership of the property, outside and beyond the jurisdiction of the Maple Ridge HOA. It upheld every count of the civil suit: trespass, harassment, defamation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The forged zoning map, a separate matter already under criminal review by the district attorney's office. Karen was ordered to pay damages, both compensatory and punitive, and to issue a formal written apology as part of the judgment. HOA's insurance was going to cover part of it, but the rest, out of pocket. When the decision was read aloud, I didn't feel triumphant. Not immediately. I felt tired. This thing had taken weeks of my life, burned through peace, time, and reputation. Luke had fled back to France. My yard had become a war zone. And all because someone couldn't stand seeing something she couldn't control. But that feeling didn't last long. The news hit the local press like a thunderclap. Judge sides against HOA in property dispute. Headlines blared. Private landowner wins case after HOA harassment. I got calls from people I hadn't spoken to in years, college friends, old clients, even my high school civics teacher. Neighbors I'd never met stopped me in the grocery store to shake my hand. "We're rooting for you," they'd say. "Thanks for standing up." HOA meetings went nuclear. Half the board resigned. A special election was called. And best of all, Karen was removed from the presidency by a unanimous board vote and banned from holding office in any HOA function within the county. Word around town was she put her house on the market within a week. I'd like to say she left quietly. She didn't. Someone caught her on video screaming at the movers, accusing them of scratching her hydrangeas. The video ended up on TikTok with the caption, "Karen gets evicted by karma." My lawyer sent it to me. I watched it twice, then put my phone away and stepped outside. It was a clear, warm evening, the kind Luke used to love. I sat on the porch watching the sun drop behind the tree line, a glass of bourbon in hand. Sophia stopped by, just like she'd been doing since the hearing, this time with her teenage daughter, who handed me a hand-drawn thank you card that read, "Thanks for protecting our neighborhood from the crazies." We laughed. Later that week, the newly reformed HOA board issued a public statement apologizing to the community, promising internal reforms, and pledging never to pursue boundary extensions without full community consent. Someone even floated the idea of naming a neighborhood bench in my honor. I declined. I didn't need a bench. I had my land. I had peace. I had my name back. And for the first time in a long while, I had silence. The good kind. Life didn't go back to normal, not exactly, but it found a new rhythm. The porch swing creaked again in the evenings, this time under my own weight. No guitar, no Luke singing old French protest songs. Just me, a bourbon glass, and the sound of cicadas. It wasn't lonely. Not anymore. It was earned. After the ruling, I kept my head low for a while. No more interviews, no more Facebook posts, no more legal jargon or reporter calls or HOA board meeting transcripts. I just existed, planted tomatoes, reseeded the backyard where the code inspectors trampled the herbs, fixed the gate latch for the 100th time. I completed the community service the judge had assigned in exchange for expunging the battery charge. I requested that my hours be used for something useful, and they placed me in a local adult ed program to give a few talks on property rights and private ownership. Go figure, that actually felt right. Small room, folding chairs, confused folks with notices in their mailboxes, and no idea what a zoning variance was. I told them what I knew, gave them a copy of my binder system, showed them how to install cheap outdoor cameras and not take crap from clipboard tyrants. I never said Karen's name. Didn't need to. Her absence became its own story. No one's seen her around town since the house sold. Word was she moved to Georgia, or possibly one of those weird inland HOA subdivisions with numbered lakes and artificial swans. I kept waiting for another Karen to rise up, some angry new president full of rules and ambition. But the new HOA board was more interested in block parties and repairing sidewalks. Boring stuff. Peaceful. One Saturday morning, I heard the sound of a truck pulling up the gravel drive. I went out to check, and there, stepping out of the cab like nothing had happened, was Luke. Same damn tweed blazer, same ridiculous roller bag. He didn't say anything at first, just raised a bottle of wine, red this time, Bordeaux, and gave me a little nod. "Miss me, mon frère?" I didn't answer, just walked over and hugged him hard. That was enough. We sat on the porch that night like old times, watching the fireflies light up the tree line. He caught me up on Paris, on some woman named Isabel who was either his girlfriend or landlord, unclear, and on how he'd watched every piece of coverage about the trial. "You are a legend," he said with that lazy grin. "You should run for mayor. Or king." "No thanks," I said. "I already fought one kingdom." Later that evening, I lit up the grill, and we ate steak and drank wine and let the bourbon wait its turn. I brought out the old Bluetooth speaker. He played Django. We didn't talk about Karen or courtrooms or fences. Only once when I asked if he was staying did he pause. For a while, he said, "I think I want to see what peace looks like." I nodded. So did I. That summer, I saw something I hadn't in a long time. Kids riding bikes past my property, not staring, not avoiding, just riding, laughing, free. One of them even waved. And one day, maybe a month later, a new neighbor moved in just down the road. Young guy, fresh-faced, hauling boxes out of a U-Haul. He saw me on the porch, raised a hand, then walked over. "You Tom?" "Yeah." "You the guy who stood up to that HOA president, Karen?" I sighed, smiled. "Yeah, that was me." He grinned wide. "Hell yeah. I read all about it. Thought they were making half that stuff up." "Nope, every word's true." He nodded. "Cool. You mind if I use your fence line to back in my trailer? HOA said it might scuff the grass on their side." I chuckled. "My fence doesn't care about grass." He backed it in perfectly. When he was done, I walked back to the porch, sat down with Luke, and raised my glass toward the woods. Not a victory toast, just acknowledgement of peace, of pain, of persistence, and of the land, my land, that was finally, undeniably mine.